Bycie na Infoshare jest jedną z niewielu okazji, w których można spotkać ludzi, którzy są zainteresowani tym, co za technologicznym horyzontem.
To najlepsze miejsce, żeby się spotkać. Infoshare tak naprawdę jest początkiem wielu rozmów i wielu relacji biznesowych.
Przyjeżdżałem tutaj zawsze, żeby posłuchać innych, zainspirować się ich historiami. Wychodziłem stąd zawsze z taką nową dawką energii. Zdecydowanie polecam. To jest moja ulubiona konferencja w Polsce.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Just Join IT channel, where we meet with people from the IT community, programmers and not only programmers, and we often discuss ideas, share some hot topics, discuss them, and share some news. Today's session is the first one related to the Infoshare conference that we have this year in couple weeks. Because of that, we have our special guest, so you can use chats next to videos in our social media to say hi to Kent Dodds, who is well-known speaker, teacher, and trainer in the JavaScript community, but not only there, right, Kent?
Yeah, I would like to be well known, I guess, if that makes sense. In the general web developer industry. But yeah, mostly JavaScript world. I don't think there are very many Python or Java devs who know who I am.
That's fair. Okay, first thing first, I wanted to ask you about your visit in Poland, because you mentioned before we went live that this is your first time. Do you have some expectations regarding how Poland is?
Ooh, well, I don't know if I'd say I have any expectations in particular. Well, I suppose I expect it to be a little colder because it is starting to get that time of year. And I was just in India, so I expect it to be a little colder than India. But I have been to Europe a few times, so yeah, probably the closest I've been is Stockholm. I don't know if Stockholm is closer than Amsterdam to Poland. My geography is not as good, but
That's
I
tricky.
expect it to be, yeah, maybe a little bit like that. I have liked it every time I've traveled to Europe, so I'm looking forward to getting out there to Poland.
Yeah, I can promise you that you can expect different weather. Like especially here in Gdańsk, we have all kinds of weathers all time of the year, every time of the year. So yeah, pack a lot of clothes, different ones. So
yeah, jackets and all that.
yeah, you're coming here to talk about the next web transformation, right? Can you give us a glimpse of what you will be talking about during the presentation?
Yes. So I'm really excited about this talk because I feel like we're at a very interesting stage of the web world where we're over the last decade and a half. Well, actually, web has been around for 25 years. That was the HTTP spec was standardized back in 96. HTML just the year before that. So it's been about yeah, a little more than 25 years now. And over the course of all that time, we have had a number of different ways to build web applications. It started out as just static files, HTML files that you would write and put on some server and people could look at them. But eventually we decided to generate those files at runtime. PHP made that really popular, especially. And from that point forward, we really started to build web applications. We started out with multi-page apps, and then we experienced some problems with that. So we went into JavaScript sprinkles or progressive enhancement with multi-page apps. I call those PEMPAs, progressively enhanced multi-page apps. And then from there, we had a lot of problems with that. So we went into SPAs, single-page apps. And there are and that's kind of the stage we're at right now, where the vast majority of the industry is working on or moving to single-page apps. And then I think that we're entering a new transition to what I'm calling a PESPA, a progressively enhanced single-page app. So it's actually a mix of what we had with multi-page apps with what we have now with single-page apps. And I'm going to kind of describe how that history happened and what I expect the future to be and what that means for web developers in the world today.
Okay, I didn't realize there's so much history in here. How long are you in the web development actually?
Yeah, I joined the industry around our transition from multi-page apps to single-page apps. And so that, let's see, specifically, I graduated from college and started my first full-time job in 2014. And so it's been a little while. Before that, just a little bit before that, I was an intern. So I think I had about 2 years as part-time web developer, and maybe a year and a half of part-time software developer. I was doing Java back then. So yeah, I've been in the industry for a little while, and read a little of the history books for stuff. Because when I was a kid, a teenager, actually, HTTP was standardized when I was like 8. And so when I was young, I did a little bit of HTML stuff, just like to play around with it. But I never really got into programming till college. So yeah, anyway, you'll find I forgot to mention to you, but I tend to ramble. So feel free to interrupt me if I
will
just
remember
can't
that.
stop talking.
Yeah, I wanted to interrupt a while ago because I'm not sure you've seen, but we had first comments from our community. Actually, that was the surprise from our community. Okay, we have our favorite mentor here. So that reminds me that I wanted to ask about your mentors. Actually, you are considering someone who teaches others. Who taught you?
Oh yeah. Well, so when I was first getting into software, as an intern, you typically have an official mentor. Maybe that's your manager. I had one job where I was in business intelligence, and so I was doing a lot of database stuff. And so I had an official mentor there. His name was Tyler. He's a great, amazing database ETL SQL master. But yeah, and then when I had my job at Domo, that was my first web job as an intern. I pretty much just like took whoever I could as a mentor. I didn't have anybody officially as my mentor, but anybody that I could, I wanted to just learn from. And so I spent a lot of time in meetings that I had no business in, just listening and listening to conversations that were going around around me. I know there's a lot of criticism for open floor plan offices, and lots of us aren't even in offices anymore, but I don't really like open floor plan offices. But as a beginner, that was awesome because I could just listen to what everybody else was saying, and learn a lot from them. So I kind of turned people into my mentor. I never, outside of my internships, I never actually had an official mentor. And so I just observed and listened and asked a lot of questions from my coworkers.
Great. Yeah, that sounds like a total immersion in the IT world. Speaking of that, like your career is actually quite public right now, yeah? Because you were involved in remix community. You are involved in remix community. A couple years ago,
still,
yeah, I see the logo in the background also.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah,
really fancy one. We had one here, but it's broken right now. And
oh, bummer.
yeah, it happens. But I wanted to ask about your decision to go full-time teaching. Yeah, that was like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, it was actually, I think it was 4 years ago now. So as soon as I graduated from, actually even before I graduated, I was teaching my classmates. At my internship at Domo, one of my coworkers, Dave Geddes, actually, he's a big educator these days too. He works at Shopify now. Really awesome person. Lives down the street from me. Actually, not down the street, but like we've had lunch. But anyway, he was he came to Domo and taught a workshop on AngularJS, and I asked him, "Hey, this is a really great workshop, like good workshop material. Can I use it to teach my classmates in school?" And he said, "Sure." So I convinced Firebase to sponsor pizza, so that I met them at NGConf and just developed a relationship there. So I convinced them to sponsor pizza so I could get my classmates to come to this little meetup style workshop sort of thing. And so I've always really enjoyed. That was probably my first. It certainly was my first workshop that I ever delivered. But I've always been very excited about teaching people. And so, yeah, I've been teaching on the side for my entire software developer career as a full-time software dev. I'd work all day and then have dinner with the family, put the kids to bed, and then my wife would say, I love you, and like I'd love to hang out sometime, but I've been with the kids all day. I'm tired. I don't want to be around anybody right now. And so I just go down to my office and work. We did spend lots of time together. We go on date every week and everything. But anyway, yeah. So I've been just teaching. It was just a couple months after graduating that I created my first Egghead course. A few months after that, I went to my first international conference in Sweden, Stockholm. That was awesome. And yeah, it's just been a big part of who I was. And so when I eventually created testingjavascript.com, at that time I was still at PayPal. And the launch of that site, launches always do really well, but this launch just blew me away with how well that went. I made more than my PayPal salary with that launch. And so I realized, oh my gosh, I guess I don't need two salaries. I don't care to be like hugely rich or anything. So I certainly would rather just be comfortable and spend time with my family. And as my kids are getting older too, like it just, it's time to spend more time with them too. So yeah, I decided, oh, well, I don't need my PayPal salary anymore. So I left PayPal. And that was in, I think, 2018 when I did that and went full-time teacher. And that first year, I updated testing JavaScript. The second year, I built Epic React. The third year, I rebuilt my own website, kenzydodds.com, among other things. And then this last year, I've been a part of Remix. That lasted about 10 months. And so now I'm back full-time educator because I'm going to be working on Epic Web Dev. So there you go. Long answer to your very simple question of my whole history as a teacher.
Yeah, that's a really that's a lot of material to ask extra questions actually.
Sorry,
so thank you for that.
Not talk too much.
Basically, you mentioned that you started from Angular. So are you in contact with Angular community? Do you see like the differences between how those communities evolve, especially with your experience with driving the Remix community actually?
Yeah, sure. So I actually, my first start was jQuery Spaghetti, and then Backbone, and then AngularJS. And I was very involved in the AngularJS community. I had a podcast. I had the most popular forms library. Interestingly, somebody literally just tweeted at me before we went live that they were like used AngularJS. It's Angular Formally, and they were just asking if there's something like that for React, and I said no. Sorry, I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, I was way into the AngularJS community. I spoke at ngconf, and yeah, this last ngconf it's always in Salt Lake City, so it's just like up the street from me, like a 45-minute drive. And Shai Resnick of the Angular community invited me to go out to lunch, and so I went out to lunch with him. I actually was just with Miško Hevery last week at Infobep in Croatia. I was with him there a year earlier as well. He's the creator of Angular, working on Quick now. Yeah, so I have a good relationship with my friends from the Angular community. I don't talk with lots of them very often anymore because we're kind of interestingly like in different worlds really when you're in these different frameworks. But and so you just don't rub shoulders. You're not working on the same open source projects or anything like that. And so, but yes, I am still friends with a lot of the folks that I knew there.
Okay, speaking of open source community, like JavaScript testing library was a very big success. We have like React testing library. Do we have something like that for Angular?
Yes, yeah. So testing library, originally I created that because I was giving a workshop about testing. And I'd given it before. I was teaching Enzyme because that was the de facto standard for testing React components. And I was reworking the workshop material a little bit and wanted to make it just better. And I noticed that I normally try to teach like the basic principles of the thing before I get into the tools, so that you understand what the tool is doing. Like in testing JavaScript, we actually build a simple version of Jest and the assertion library and everything before we actually start using Jest, just so people understand what it's doing. And so I was building a simple library, or like a simple function that would help you test a React component. And then moving from that over to Enzyme, it was a pretty big jump. So I didn't feel really comfortable with that. I was trying to figure out how can I have something a little bit smaller jump there. And then also, I was going to make this big document that listed all of the things you shouldn't do with Enzyme. And I was like, man, it's just a shame that I have to say, here, I'm going to teach you this thing, and now like you can't use all of it. I thought, wouldn't it be nice if there was just a tool that existed that you could use all of it, and it all is good. And so that's when I worked on, I realized that this little function that I was working on for teaching the fundamentals of testing React components was actually pretty simple. And so I decided to build that into a library. And 2 weeks later, I taught like 80 developers to use my brand new library. I'm really glad that worked out because otherwise they might like want their money back. So yeah, what I realized pretty soon after releasing that was that most of the library had nothing to do with React. It was mostly querying the DOM and firing events at the DOM. And the DOM was the common denominator. There was just a tiny bit in there for like creating an element and rendering a React component to that element. And so I decided to extract that to DOM testing library. I can't remember what the main motivation was there. It may have been for Preact support. But once I did that, then it was like, oh, we can just like use this with anything that renders to the DOM. And so, yeah, now there's like literally anywhere that you find the DOM, you can use testing library. So like there's even a Playwright testing library, there's Cypress testing library, and then Angular, Vue, Svelte, all of the things. I don't think there's an Ember. I don't think anybody ever built an Ember or a Knockout or a jQuery testing library.
Maybe
But,
there is one
yeah.
in like void of GitHub repositories.
Yeah, yeah, could be.
Yeah, I'm really curious how connecting, like, because the testing library community is very big, and on top of that, you added Remix community, which is also not small. Like, it grew quite extensively over a couple of months, right? So how do you manage to manage those communities, and on top of that, having, like you mentioned, 4 kids, right?
Yes, yeah, I have 4 kids. So yeah, as far as managing these communities, well, first of all, I'll say that I mismanaged communities early in my career, and things crashed and burned as far as like open source projects. So Angular formally is one that I feel like I kind of let down because nobody took it over when I left the Angular community and couldn't work on it anymore. And that might be okay because like somebody did start working on an Angular 2 version of that library, and then I believe that's still being maintained, but the AngularJS version died with me as far as my relationship to AngularJS. And so from that, I realized that I needed to do a better job of making it so that my creations could outlive myself. And so that I had to be very intentional about spending a little bit of extra effort getting other people to do work. Even if I could do it like myself in 5 minutes, it'd be pretty easy. I decided it was worthwhile to invest a little extra time so that other people could participate. And that's what I did with testing library. Downshift.js is another library that's actually pretty popular in the React world. And I got contributors pretty early on into that. And I built that when I was at PayPal. And so now there's a maintainer who is working on that and doing a great job maintaining that. Testing library, it was like 2 or maybe 3 years ago that I actually stopped maintaining testing library myself and handed it off to other maintainers who are just doing a stellar job working, keeping that up to date and everything. There's not a lot to do still, I think, as far as code changes and things, but there's like, it's not insignificant. So with the Remix community, that one's a little more unique because I didn't create Remix. was involved from the very beginning, and I can go and tell the entire story if you want to, but to keep it short, I just like talked with Ryan a lot, and he shared stuff with me, and I gave him feedback and things. And so when I did finally join the team, my role was to take care of the community and the developer experience. And so, yeah, things like Discord, meetups, conference, all of that stuff. And I just feel like it's more fun when we are working with other people, and it's also it's more rewarding. What you build is better, better suited for more people. And like there are a lot of blind spots that you have as a developer, things that you just aren't exposed to that other people can help fill. And then you cannot scale to hundreds of thousands of people or more. And so you need to have a solid community. And so enabling other people to do the good work that they want to do already is a big part of how I build communities that outlast myself.
That's a great response. Definitely, yeah. Sorry, I need to grab my thoughts related to what you said. Like there was a lot of topics covered.
Sorry, I should chop up my responses into smaller bite-sized pieces.
Yeah, let's believe the gods of post-production will cut it into pieces if we want.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about, especially about the remix community, because since, like, for me actually, the information about you leaving the remix team was really surprising. We were exchanging some emails before this live session, and I was surprised. I didn't manage to read that blog post. I just seen that you accomplished a lot over last 10 months. How was the reaction from the community? Like, were the people afraid that you are leaving them, or are you actually leaving them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I decided, well, so first of all, I'll just establish I didn't leave the remix. I didn't leave the remix community. I'm still very much a part of it. I didn't leave the remix team because I didn't like being a part of the remix team. I did. It was more I didn't have time to both do remix, director or developer experience, and Epic Web Dev, which is what I want to spend my time doing now. And so because I can't do it all, I had to choose, and I chose Epic Web. And we can talk more about Epic Web later if you want. Yeah, so I was concerned that me leaving, I mean, me joining the team was a big deal for a lot of people. It really helped validate people on like, oh, okay, Remix really is like pretty serious. This is a big deal that Kent is joining the team. And so I knew that leaving the team could also have a pretty negative effect. And so for that reason, I did publish a blog post explaining that I was leaving the team. And I published it at the same time that I published what I was doing next, so Epic Web. So that people understand, like I was worried that people would get this misperception that there was something wrong with Remix. Couldn't be further from the truth. I'm absolutely featuring Remix in Epic Web in a big way. Yeah, so it really is, I just don't have time to do both. And so far, as far as the response from the community, I think actually a lot of people don't know. There were quite a few people who didn't know I joined. People don't follow every single change of every single developer in their career anyway. And so it wasn't like a huge deal, I think. But there were definitely a number of people who looked at that and like, oh my gosh, what there must be something wrong. And I think they found out pretty quick that nope, nothing wrong with Remix. Everything's still going well over there. Just can't do it all.
Yeah, I have to be honest. That was my initial reaction. What just happened? Like, why? Because like, I can imagine that contributing to this community in the beginning, like trying to show Remix in the best possible way, especially having, let's say, Next.js as some kind of competition. I'm not sure if those are like competing communities, projects. It's really hard to say.
Yeah, you wouldn't use them together. So yeah, they are inherently competing for that reason, I guess.
Yeah. So what I wanted to ask, you mentioned Epic Web. That's a really hot topic right now. And before we go into details about Epic Web, I'm really curious about your experience from recording the previous courses. You recorded like testing JavaScript, then Epic React. What are the lessons learned, and how you plan to improve the next course?
Yeah, sure. So I've been teaching for a long time, as we talked about earlier, and I've learned a lot about teaching. And I've got this blog post titled "How I Teach" that you can go look at how I teach. But yeah, so over the years, I've just learned a lot. I started, as far as video courses go, I started with Egghead style, very like bite-sized, small, focused. And I still think that's a really great way to teach and get lessons across. But also from this book called Make It Stick, I learned that it's really, really helpful to have practical application and like actual exercises, and to have those, or to work on desirable difficulties. And so you want to like, learning is absolutely a hard process, and you can't avoid that. If it's not hard, you're not going to remember. It has to be hard, is what I'm saying. And so there is an interesting balance between hard enough and too hard. So like, it could be so hard that you decide, oh, this isn't for me, I'm not going to work on this. But also it could be not hard enough, where it's not challenging and you're not going to retain the information. And so that balance is very challenging. And so because of that, testing JavaScript, I built that when I was still doing Egghead style stuff. So like, no exercises. It was just like, I had the repos and I just worked through those. And it's very successful. People are still getting licenses. They are still recommending it to their friends and everything. So it's still very useful. But when I revamped testing JavaScript, I decided to add another module called testing node applications, where I would talk about testing node backends like APIs and stuff. And with that, I decided to, instead of take a workshop that I had and convert it to the Egghead style of like short, punchy videos, I would take my workshop and turn that into a recorded video. So it would be like a self-paced workshop. That worked out super well. It was way more interesting for me to create, and it was way more useful for people to go through. And so that's why I decided to feed that into what Epic React is. So Epic React is a bunch of exercises, and because that's what my workshops were. So I delivered my workshops like 3 or 4 times each, until I really knew that the exercises were doing what they were supposed to. And I could like predict the questions that people were going to ask, so I could answer them preemptively. And then yeah, that's how I delivered it. So as far as what the format of Epic Web will be, it will be very, very similar to Epic React. One nice improvement will be, my plan is to make it more cohesive between workshops. So where Epic React would sometimes have exercises that built on one after the other, it didn't always, and often you'd have like a chunk of exercises that built on the same example, and then another chunk of exercises that were something completely different. In Epic Web, and sometimes you can't avoid that. Like, we're talking about performance for an infinitely scrolled list. You're not also going to use that. I mean, you might use it for media queries or something, but like, probably not. Like, it's not always the best example of everything. But with Epic Web, I'm planning on starting with a really big like production ready application that you would build at a product company, and turning that into workshops. So every workshop will be working on the same application. And therefore the examples will be a lot more cohesive, not only in the design of everything, but also in like the subject matter. And so you can like it. One of the big challenges of teaching is the balance between contrived enough to be able to focus on what you're trying to learn, but practical enough to be able to apply and understand why what you are doing is relevant. And that's a difficult balance. But if I do a cohesive app through the whole experience, then it can be practical the whole way through, because you've been building this the whole time from the very start. And so there's not a lot of distraction around what you're actually trying to learn, because you know the whole app. So yeah, there will definitely be some improvements to my teaching style. But yeah, there's a lot of work to do to get to that point.
Do you have this application, or you're still building it?
Yeah, I'm still working on it. I actually, one other unique thing about Epic Web is I'm planning on live streaming the entire thing as I build it. And so right now I'm building the application, because you have to have the application before you can turn it into workshops. And so I live stream almost every day. I'd be live streaming right now if I weren't talking with you.
Sorry.
And it's just on my YouTube channel. Nope, that's okay. It's fine. Yeah, so I'm working on the material right now, or the app, and then I'll start chopping that into smaller sized workshops, or like day-long workshops. And I plan on live streaming all of that too. Lots of it will probably be boring, but my partners at Skill Recordings, or Egghead, they are going through all the live streams and like pulling out the pieces that are very useful. I don't know if they're going to use the actual video, but that will be used to make sure that I cover everything that that people would need if they were tasked to build this themselves. And so, yeah, I'm working very closely with them to make sure that if it's necessary knowledge to build this app, then it's probably necessary knowledge for you as a web dev. And so I need to teach that. And so, yeah, Epic Web is going to be enormous. I think that it's best compared to an actual CS degree, really, because the goal is to onboard people who've never touched programming, and then have them on the other end be able to like build a full stack app themselves. So it's probably going to take me about 2 years to finish, maybe longer. And I expect it'll take 6 months to a year, or maybe even longer, for people to go through all the material. And that's like a dedicated pace. It's like, this is my only class at the university. That's the sort of pace I expect people to take with this.
That sounds amazing.
I mean, like, people could take a slower pace too. There's nothing wrong with taking a slower pace. But yeah, like if you're a dedicated pace, I expect it to take at least 6 months.
Nice. Like, yeah, this sounds amazing, especially that there is not many courses like that available, especially for the React community. There are some marathons of people building applications in 24 hours or stuff like that, but those are very simple projects. What you mentioned is this will be a production-ready application, and you will be doing some kind of modifications of the production-ready code and sharing all the aspects that are related to that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So the scope of the app is, if you've ever heard of Turo, or if you haven't heard of Turo, it's a site where you can rent your car, or like you can loan your car out. It's kind of like Airbnb for cars.
Yeah.
So you can rent somebody's car. And I'm building a Turo for spaceships, because I want it to be like something that's practical and interesting, but also not something that somebody would actually think is a real product.
That's a really
So
nice.
we're doing.
Yeah, that's a really nice relation to the previous course, because like you have like Rocket on Epic React, if I remember correctly. And,
Yeah, exactly. And this is also a web or an Epic style thing as well. So yeah, that's kind of the idea. And so it's all going to be Rocket Rental is what it's called. And as far as like what it's going to include, it's like everything that you would need for an Airbnb for spaceships. Mostly the MVP, but like not really. Like you could actually launch this thing. So I'm planning on, like, I've already got the data model. So we've got spaceships and starports, and we have user authentication implemented already, and reset password as well. We've got roles. So you've got an admin, a host, and a renter. And so we'll have role-based permissions. We'll probably do feature flags. We're going to do live chat between the host and the renter. Like, one thing that we're not going to do, I decided recently, is I'm not going to teach queuing, because like a good use case for that is like email, right? So, send an email, stick that in the queue. if you try to send an email yourself these days, your deliverability is going to be really bad. This is just an unfortunate aspect of the way that the web works now. Like it is very, very hard to get through spam filters. And so we're going to use a service for some things, and that is one of those things. We're also using a service for hosting, not just our app, but also the database. We are not going to be using like a data service. We are going to be using an actual database. Right now it's SQLite, but I'll probably move that over to Postgres. Yeah, just to make it more real. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about using Postgres, because that means every time you want to start up the app, you have to like start up Postgres too, and I hate doing that. but
Yeah, I prefer
yeah.
SQLite for that as well. So
Yeah. But at the same time, like I do want this to be realistic, and like at what company did you go in and you didn't have to start up a database, to start your app? Like that, that happens sometimes. Like there are some places, I suppose. But anyway, yeah, so there will be a lot of things. Another thing I'm not going to be covering is like micro front ends. I think those are overused and certainly not needed for this app. I think there are absolutely good use cases for it, but my goal is to take all of the things that like 90% of the apps on the web need, and implement all of those things into this web app. So we're also doing geolocation stuff as well. So we'll be like talking to browser APIs and stuff like that too. So yeah, tons and tons of stuff will be included in this, and I'll have a workshop on every single thing. We'll have a data modeling and Prisma database management workshop. We'll have a authentication authorization workshop. And some advanced concepts like deployment workshop. And then also, because this is geared for really anybody who wants to build anything on the web, I need to teach people how to program too. So we'll have very, very beginner stuff as well. So like, here's var or like let const, x equal 1. And, this is a data type, like very, very beginner stuff. Which is exciting for me because I've actually, aside from my wife, I've never taught anybody how to program from no knowledge before, and that didn't go well with
you know
with
what?
my wife.
I definitely want to catch you on the conference if you will have some time, because like I'm teaching for like 6 years just in this formula, so I'm not recording videos. I'm teaching directly from scratch, so we can share some ideas there.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your ideas. That would be very helpful. Yeah, everything that I've taught to date has assumed some experience with programming, and so this will be a bit of a new thing for me. And that's why before I actually record anything, I will deliver all of these things as workshops at least 3 times, like to live attendees. And so like I'm planning on this being 20 to 30 workshops. So I've got like a crazy amount of workshops, like over 100 workshops probably, to teach in the course of releasing this. And so, yeah, if you want to be one of my guinea pigs, join me up with one of those workshops.
I would love to be the guinea pig in this topic. Like I don't have any more questions related to why you left the role at Remix, since like what you already described is. I would say this is work for like the army of people, not just one person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I actually have considered. I've thought about having hiring people or like teaming up with other instructors, and people ask me about that a lot. I don't think that I'm planning on doing that. I like to do it all myself, and I realize I could probably make a bigger impact and reach more people if I did. But a lot of why I do what I do is because I enjoy doing it. I want to do this myself. And it's kind of a challenge. And I've wanted to do this for a very long time. I called it KCD EDU. It's like everything that I know about web, I'm going to teach in this. And then when I'm all done in 2, maybe 3 years, then I will just be done and I'll leave the industry and just like go hang out with my family all the time.
I did everything.
I don't have any more to share. Yeah, but we'll see. My wife is like, yeah, there's no way you're going to be able to quit developing software and speaking and workshops and all that. So we'll see. But that's kind of the dream, is that I'll just like go be a snowboard bum or something.
Yeah, you sound like a person with a great vision. So I wish you good luck with this course. And as you mentioned, like I can be your guinea pig if you want to check some materials. We will definitely discuss that during the conference. Speaking of that,
Well, thank you.
Just to remind people who joined this live session later than in the beginning, this is related to Infoshare conference in Gdańsk, which is happening 6th and 7th October. And Kent will be speaking there about web transformation, next web transformation. So rewind to the beginning of this live session after we send the recording. And yeah, that's it. I don't have any other questions. So as you mentioned, you're pretty busy. I don't want to waste more of your precious time. And I'm really happy to see you at the conference.
I'm really excited to come. Like I said, I've never been to Poland before, and I'm excited to experience that. So thank you so much for having me on this Just Join IT live stream. It's been a good time.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.